I thanked my aunt for giving me a bicycle. It was shiny and red, with a little silver bell that jingled whenever I pressed it. I smiled, feeling grateful, or at least I tried to feel grateful. Claire, my aunt, looked at me with a gentle, knowing smile. Her blue eyes seemed to hold secrets that I wasn't ready to understand yet. "I gave you a Mercedes, you know," she said softly. I laughed nervously. Thank you. The bike is amazing. I really love it." She shook her head, her smile widening just a little. "No, Emily, you're looking at it the wrong way. It's not just a bicycle. You just haven't realized what it really is yet." Her words echoed in my mind long after I left her house. How could a bicycle, something so ordinary, something I had wanted for so long, be a Mercedes? I stared at it when I got home, resting against the wall of my bedroom, its red paint gleaming in the afternoon sun. The bell glinted like tiny silver stars. I couldn't stop thinking about it. My aunt always had a way of seeing things I couldn't. I tried to tell myself I should be happy, and I was, in a way, but there was something about her words, something persistent and gentle, that made my chest feel tight. Maybe life had been trying to teach me a lesson I didn't understand yet. I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Ohio. Our streets are lined with maple trees, their leaves turning shades of orange and gold as fall approaches. Neighbors wave when they see each other, and the hum of life is calm, steady. Our house isn't large, but it's warm. Dad works long hours at the hardware store he owns, fixing everything from leaky faucets to broken shelves. Mom works as a nurse at the local hospital, often coming home tired but smiling anyway. Jake, my younger brother, was already awake when I came downstairs. His messy blonde hair stuck up in every direction, and his green eyes were wide with excitement. "Morning, Em," he chirped. "Can I try the bike later?" I laughed, ruffling his hair. "Sure, but don't scratch it." Even in these small moments, I felt the tension that had been quietly growing inside me. I loved my family, and I loved our life. But still, a little voice whispered, "What if there's more? What if I'm missing something bigger?" At school, the feeling followed me. My friends, Madison and Sophie, were chatting about a weekend trip to the city and the new phones their parents had bought them. I smiled politely, listening, but a familiar twinge of envy ran through me. I told myself it was silly. I had a bike, a family, a safe home. But the longing didn't go away. During lunch, I sat under a tree with my notebook, doodling absent-mindedly. I watched my classmates laugh, sharing stories of their weekends. I wanted to be happy for them, and I tried, but I couldn't shake the ache that had quietly settled in my chest. After school, I decided to ride my new bicycle around the neighborhood. The streets were quiet, the air crisp with the first hints of autumn. The bike felt smooth beneath me, its bell jingling softly with every press. I pedaled past our little park, where children kicked soccer balls and parents sat on benches chatting. I waved at Mr. Henderson, our neighbor, who was trimming his hedges. Everything looked normal, calm, perfect. And yet, the restlessness remained. I remembered my Aunt Claire's words. "I gave you a Mercedes." I had laughed at first, not understanding, but now, as I pedaled through the streets, her words echoed in my mind. Maybe she was trying to tell me something deeper, something I couldn't see yet. When I got home, I found Mom in the kitchen preparing dinner. The smell of roasted chicken filled the air, and Jake was helping her set the table, humming a little tune. "You've been quiet today," Mom said gently, noticing my distant expression. "I'm fine," I said automatically, even though it wasn't entirely true. I didn't want to worry her or make her think I was ungrateful. Later, I walked over to Claire's house. Her small, cozy home smelled of tea and old books. She was tending to her garden, her hands moving carefully over the flowers. "Hey, Em," she said warmly, noticing me at the gate. "Want to sit for a while?" I nodded, and she led me to the porch. The air smelled faintly of wet soil and chrysanthemums. We sipped tea together in silence for a few minutes, letting the quiet stretch between us. Finally, I spoke. Aunt Claire, I don't understand. What did you mean about the Mercedes? How can a bicycle be a Mercedes? She smiled gently. A Mercedes isn't just a car, Emily. It's value, freedom, opportunity, love, all the things that make life rich. You think you're holding a bicycle, but in truth, you've been given a gift far greater. You just haven't realized it yet. I frowned gently. But it's just a bike. I wanted it for so long, and it's perfect, but I still feel, I don't know, like something's missing. She looked at me, her blue eyes soft. That feeling, that longing, it's natural. Life will always make you want more. But part of growing up is learning to see the gifts you already have. The bike, your family, your home, your heart, they're your Mercedes. You'll see it in time. I left her house that evening, walking slowly back home. The streets glistened from the afternoon rain. The world felt calm and familiar, but the restlessness in my chest had not disappeared. If anything, it had grown slightly. It wasn't just the bicycle, I realized. It was everything. Every moment I compared myself to others, every small ache of envy, every quiet longing for something more, it all lived inside me. And I knew, somehow, that before I could understand what my aunt meant, I had to experience these feelings, live through them, and see for myself what truly mattered. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The bike leaned in the corner, quiet and waiting, and somewhere deep inside, I felt the first flicker of understanding. Life had already given me more than I could see. I just had to learn how to notice it. The weeks after receiving the bicycle felt strange. On one hand, I loved it. I loved the freedom of riding through the quiet streets of our suburban neighborhood, the crisp air brushing my face and the soft jingle of the bell. On the other hand, a small, stubborn ache had begun to grow inside me I couldn't shake. At school, it seemed like everyone had something new, something exciting. Madison had just gotten a shiny new tablet, Sophie was talking about her weekend trip to Chicago, and I felt the familiar pang of envy gnawing at me. I tried to be happy for them, I really did, but no matter how hard I forced a smile, a part of me whispered, "Why not me? Why don't I have that?" Even at home, the feelings crept in. I watched Jake tearing around the house, loud and carefree, and I snapped at Jake one afternoon for touching my bicycle. "Jake, I said don't touch it," I yelled, instantly regretting it. His wide green eyes filled with hurt, and he ran off, leaving me feeling guilty. "I'm sorry, Jake," I muttered quietly, staring at the floor. But the guilt didn't erase the restlessness inside me. I tried to distract myself. I spent hours on homework, trying to focus, but even that felt like a comparison game. Whenever I saw classmates getting praise for their projects, I felt a little sting of jealousy. I tried to tell myself I was overthinking it. I had my own achievements, I had my family, I had the bike. But the small voice inside wouldn't quiet. It whispered constantly, "You're missing something. There's more out there. Everyone else has it. Why don't you?" Even Claire's gentle words started to feel frustrating. "Slow down, Emily. Appreciate what you have," she would say. And I wanted clarity, not patience. I wanted proof, not quiet wisdom. I didn't understand yet that her way was exactly what I needed. One afternoon, during a particularly busy week, the tension boiled over. I was riding my bike through the neighborhood when Jake fell behind, struggling to keep up on his own little tricycle. I stopped and waited, frowning. "Come on, Jake," I urged, trying to hide my frustration. "I'm trying," he shouted back, his small face red with effort. I took a deep breath, gripping the handlebars tighter. Part of me wanted to yell, to push past him and ride alone. Part of me wanted to turn back, to escape the feelings I couldn't name. But instead, I waited, silently, my heart racing, my mind swirling with guilt and envy and frustration all at once. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Madison, Sophie, and all the little things I wanted but didn't have. I thought about my parents working long hours, Jake playing without a care, and Claire's mysterious words about the Mercedes. Why couldn't I be happy? I had everything I needed, and yet I felt so restless, so unsatisfied. The next morning, at breakfast, Mom noticed my quiet mood. "You've been distant lately, Emily. Everything okay at school?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired." She didn't push, but I could see the concern in her eyes. I hated that I was making my own family feel my restlessness. At school, the envy didn't ease. A classmate, Lily, showed off a new art set her parents had bought her. I congratulated her, smiled politely, but inside a mix of longing and frustration bubbled. Why did it feel like everyone else had something special, something I didn't? I started noticing other small things too. My bike wasn't the fastest, the most expensive, or the most impressive. I caught myself wishing it had gears or a basket or shiny decals like the ones my friends' bikes had. And every time I did, guilt washed over me immediately. I was grateful, I told myself, but the longing refused to go away. At home, Jake started asking me more questions, needing my help with homework and projects. I tried to be patient, but sometimes my temper frayed. "Jake, can you just figure it out yourself?" I snapped once, immediately regretting it. His small face fell, and I felt that familiar pang of guilt. Claire's words haunted me. "You're looking at it the wrong way." I wanted to understand, but I didn't know how. I wanted happiness, but I didn't know how to find it in what I already had. Even simple rides on the bicycle became bittersweet. The wind on my face and the smooth pavement beneath me should have been enough, but instead of joy, I felt the hollow ache of comparison, the whispering voice that told me I was missing something. One evening, after another day of school, homework, and small frustrations, I found myself walking to Claire's house. Rain had started to fall, soft and steady, tapping against the sidewalks. I arrived, soaked, my hair plastered to my forehead, and sat on her porch steps silently. Claire appeared, carrying a warm blanket. "Emily, come in before you catch a cold," she said softly. "I don't understand, Claire," I whispered, shivering. "I try to be happy. I have my family, my bike, my home, but I feel empty. I don't know why I can't just be happy." She led me inside and handed me a cup of hot cocoa. I wrapped my hands around it, feeling warmth seep slowly into my fingers, my chest. "You're feeling what many people feel," she said gently. "It's called longing, and it's normal. But the problem isn't the longing, it's not seeing the gifts already around you. The bicycle, your family, your home, these are treasures. You're blind to them because you're looking elsewhere." I listened, but frustration still brewed inside me. I wanted the lesson to be simple, visible, obvious, but it wasn't. Life never is. That night, I lay in bed, staring at my ceiling, rain tapping against the window. The ache hadn't gone away. It had grown, stretching quietly across every thought, every moment. I didn't know it yet, but this restless struggle, the envy, the frustration, the longing, was necessary. It was preparing me for the moment when I would finally see the truth about the bicycle, the Mercedes, and life itself. Because sometimes the heart has to ache, the mind has to wander, and the soul has to long before it can truly understand what it has been given. And for Emily, that understanding was still ahead. It was a rainy afternoon, the kind that makes everything feel slower, softer. I had taken the bike out, hoping the ride would clear my mind, but the rain caught me halfway through the neighborhood. My clothes were soaked, my hair plastered to my face, and the streets shimmered with puddles reflecting gray clouds. I pushed the bicycle carefully along the sidewalk, my hands gripping the handlebars tightly. Each step, each splash mirrored the storm of thoughts inside me. I loved my bike, I loved my family, I loved my life, But still, that restless ache remained. The comparisons, the small envy, the longing for something bigger, they were all still there. By the time I reached Claire's house, I was shivering, exhausted, and frustrated. I stood at her porch, letting the rain soak me further, not even caring that I would catch a cold. "Emily," Claire's voice called gently from the door. She was holding a warm blanket, her hair damp from the drizzle. "Come inside before you get sick." I stepped in silently, dripping water onto the floor. She guided me to the living room, where the warm glow of lamps and the faint scent of cinnamon and tea wrapped around me like a comforting hug. She handed me a blanket and a steaming cup of cocoa. I wrapped my hands around it, letting the warmth seep slowly into my fingers, my chest, my mind. "I don't understand," I admitted, my voice small, almost a whisper. "I have everything I need, my family, my bike, my home, but I feel empty. I feel restless, jealous, like I'm missing something. I try to be grateful, but I can't." Claire nodded slowly, listening, her calm presence anchoring me. "It's normal to feel that way, Emily. It's human. The ache you feel, that longing, that restlessness, is part of growing, learning, and noticing life's gifts. But here's the truth. The thing you see as a bicycle, it's not just a bike." I frowned, looking at her through the steam rising from my cocoa. "It's not just a bike?" She smiled softly. "No, I said it was a Mercedes, remember? And I meant it. That bike is more than it seems. It's freedom, joy, independence, growth. It allows you to explore, to feel the wind on your face, to make choices, to learn patience and responsibility. That is a gift far greater than what you can see." Her words sank slowly, like raindrops dripping into a quiet pond. I sipped my cocoa, feeling a warmth, not just in my hands, but in my chest. A quiet realization started to grow. I had been blind to the abundance around me, blind to the love and opportunities life had given me. I never thought of it that way," I whispered, tears pricking my eyes. Claire reached out, placing her hand gently over mine. "Most people don't. That's why they ache, they compare, they long for more. But when you finally see the gift for what it is, everything changes. The bicycle isn't just a bike, it's your Mercedes. You just had to open your eyes." The truth settled slowly, quietly. I realized that all the envy, all the frustration, all the restless longing, they weren't punishments, they were preparation. Life had been giving me lessons all along, and now I was ready to understand them. I thought of my family. Dad working long hours at the hardware store, Mom caring for patients with unwavering kindness, Jake's laughter and curiosity, my own little life full of love and warmth. I had overlooked all of it, thinking I was missing something bigger, something more obvious. And now I saw it. The bicycle, the freedom, the simple joys, they were the Mercedes my aunt had spoken of. Everything I had thought was ordinary was extraordinary when seen through the right eyes. I felt tears roll down my cheeks, not of sadness, but of understanding, of gratitude, of quiet joy. For the first time, the ache in my chest softened, replaced by a gentle peace. The next days were different. I still rode my bicycle, but each ride felt new, alive. I noticed the sound of wind through the trees, the sparkle of sunlight on puddles, the simple joy of movement. Even the little struggles, learning a tricky turn, balancing on uneven pavement, felt like achievements. At home, I noticed my parents differently. I saw Dad's hands, rough from years of work, and felt pride instead of taking them for granted. I noticed Mom's quiet smiles, the way she never complained despite exhaustion, and felt deep appreciation. And Jake, my mischievous, energetic little brother, suddenly seemed even more precious. I helped him with his homework, not out of obligation, but patience. I celebrated small victories, not comparing myself to anyone else. I realized that happiness wasn't in bigger gadgets, trips, or recognition. It was in noticing what I already had. One afternoon, I rode the bicycle down our street and helped a neighbor's little boy balance on his tricycle. The joy on his face reminded me of my own journey, the lesson Claire had given me. Life's Mercedes weren't just for me, they were everywhere, waiting to be seen, shared, and appreciated. By evening, the rain had stopped. The sun peeked through clouds, casting golden light across the wet streets. I returned home, soaked but smiling, feeling a quiet strength and peace that I had never known before. For the first time, I understood completely. The bicycle was my Mercedes. Life had been giving me gifts all along, and now I could finally see them. The days after that rainy afternoon felt lighter. I woke up earlier, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. The sunlight spilling across the rooftops, the quiet chirping of birds, the smell of fresh dew on the grass, it all felt richer, brighter. Even the red bicycle, which had once seemed like a simple toy, now felt extraordinary. Every pedal, every turn was a gentle reminder that life had already given me so much. At home, I noticed the little things differently. Dad's hands, rough and calloused from work, no longer seemed ordinary. They were evidence of his dedication, his love for our family. Mom's gentle smile, even after a long shift at the hospital, suddenly seemed miraculous. Jake's laughter, which I had sometimes found annoying, became one of the purest sounds I had ever known. And I realized that my restlessness had not been about missing something, it had been about failing to see what was already here. I started helping more around the house, not out of obligation, but out of gratitude. I would carry groceries, set the table, and even help Jake organize his messy room, noticing how proud it made him feel when I took the time. The small things no longer felt small, they were gifts in themselves. School became a place of growth rather than comparison. I still noticed my classmates' achievements, but instead of envy, I felt genuine happiness for them. Madison got a perfect score on her art project. I celebrated with her. Sophie aced her math test. I congratulated her with sincerity. And when I accomplished something myself, I no longer compared it to others. My successes were mine, and that was enough. The bicycle became more than transportation. It became my companion, a symbol of freedom and a teacher of patience. Every ride reminded me to slow down, notice the world around me, and appreciate the small moments. I found joy in simple routines, stopping at the park to watch the kids play, greeting neighbors with a smile, noticing the way the sunlight glinted off puddles after a rainstorm. Each moment felt like a small miracle. Emily also began journaling, something she had never done before. She wrote about her thoughts, her small victories, and the moments she had once overlooked. She described Jake's laughter, Dad's tired yet contented expressions after work, Mom's gentle care for patients, and the warmth of Claire's garden. Each word felt like a step toward deeper understanding and gratitude. Visits to Claire became a cherished ritual. Sometimes we would sit quietly on her porch, sipping tea, listening to the wind rustle through the autumn leaves. Other times we would watch the rain together, droplets forming delicate patterns on the window. In these moments, Emily felt a bond that went beyond words, a connection rooted in understanding, patience, and quiet wisdom. At home, the atmosphere shifted subtly but powerfully. Mom smiled more often at Emily, sensing the change in her daughter. Dad's eyes softened when he watched Emily ride her bike or help Jake with homework. Jake began seeking Emily's company with genuine excitement instead of impatience. The house felt warmer, brighter, fuller. Even challenges no longer seemed heavy. When Emily struggled with difficult homework or faced minor conflicts with friends, she approached them with calm understanding instead of frustration. Life still had obstacles, it always would, but she now saw them as opportunities to learn, to grow, and to practice gratitude. One particular afternoon, Emily rode her bicycle down the neighborhood streets and noticed a young boy trying to balance on his new tricycle. She slowed down and offered a hand, guiding him patiently. The smile on his face, the sparkle of joy in his eyes reminded her of her own journey, the moment she finally understood what her aunt had meant. Happiness, she realized, wasn't just for herself, it multiplied when shared. Even small, everyday routines felt richer. Grocery trips with Mom became moments of conversation and laughter. Helping Jake with homework became lessons in patience and empathy. Sitting in her room, Emily could hear the faint sounds of her family. Dad reading, Mom humming a tune while cooking, Jake playing quietly, and she felt full in a way she never had before. Gradually, Emily noticed her own growth. She felt calmer, more patient, more aware of the world around her. She no longer chased after recognition or compared herself to others. She celebrated quiet victories and savored small joys. She realized that the most valuable gift wasn't material, it was perspective. The red bicycle, now showing signs of wear, became a symbol of this understanding. Every pedal, every turn reminded her of the freedom, joy, and growth life had quietly offered all along. She understood that the true Mercedes her aunt had spoken of wasn't a car or a material possession, it was the ability to see, appreciate, and value life itself. One evening, much like that rainy day when everything changed, Emily returned to Claire's house. She found her aunt tending to her garden, the soft scent of flowers filling the air. "I understand now," Emily said softly. "I finally see what you meant. The bicycle, the Mercedes, it's all the same. I just had to open my eyes." Claire smiled, placing her hand gently over Emily's. "Yes, Emily, that understanding, that awareness, that is the real gift, and now you carry it with you wherever you go." Tears filled Emily's eyes, not of sadness, but of gratitude, peace, and joy. She had learned to see life in a new way. She had learned that happiness was never about having more, it was about noticing what was already there. From that day forward, Emily's life became a quiet journey of awareness. She noticed the wind in the trees, the sunlight on rooftops, the warmth of family dinners. She helped others, celebrated small victories, and cherished moments that had once gone unnoticed. She had learned a truth that few understand, that the real Mercedes in life isn't something you can buy, own, or show off. It's perspective, gratitude, and the ability to recognize the abundance that has always been yours. And in that understanding, Emily felt complete, whole, and alive. Years have passed since that rainy afternoon, yet I still remember it as if it happened yesterday. The red bicycle is no longer shiny, its paint faded in places, the little silver bell slightly bent, but every time I see it, I smile, because it reminds me of something far greater than wheels and pedals. It reminds me of life itself, of love, and of the quiet abundance I once overlooked. I often think of my Aunt Claire and her calm, knowing smile. She never pushed me, never scolded me. She simply gave me a bicycle and told me it was a Mercedes. And in that simple act, she taught me a lesson I will carry for the rest of my life, that what we often see as ordinary, small, or insignificant may in truth be extraordinary. I look at my family differently now. I see my parents not just as caregivers, but as pillars of strength, love, and sacrifice. I see Jake not just as a mischievous little brother, but as a bright soul full of curiosity and laughter. I see my home not as a modest space, but as a treasure chest of memories, warmth, and safety. Even in challenges, I find lessons. Life is not always easy, but I've learned that every obstacle, every disappointment, every restless moment is an opportunity to grow, to notice, and to appreciate. I've learned to recognize the gifts that have always been given, even when they are hidden in plain sight. Sometimes I still ride the bicycle through the quiet streets of our neighborhood. I listen to the bell, feel the wind on my face, watch sunlight glint off puddles, and I feel grateful, not because life is perfect, but because I have learned to see the perfection in what I already have. I have learned that happiness is not about having the newest, the biggest, or the most. Happiness is about perspective. Happiness is about noticing the Mercedes in our lives, even when it looks like a simple bicycle. And once you see it, your world changes forever. If I could speak to my younger self, I would say, slow down, look closely, appreciate what you have before searching for more. Life has already given you everything you need to feel rich, full, and complete. And now I live that truth quietly every day. I help others, I celebrate the small joys, I notice the little things that once went unnoticed. I have learned that the most valuable gift isn't something you can hold, it is awareness, gratitude, and the ability to truly see. So, if life ever hands you a bicycle, remember this. Sometimes that bicycle is actually a Mercedes. You just need to open your eyes, and when you do, your heart understands what it has always had. I smile as I think of that, because I finally did. I finally saw it. And in that seeing, I understood what life had been quietly whispering to me all along.